welcome to Teach With Your Hands, the podcast where we bring you the confidence, connections, and business understanding you need to teach the crafts you love. I'm Amy Costello. My guest today is Brandy Clements, a fourth-generation chair caner on a mission to dispel the myth that chair caning is a dying art. She runs Silver River Center for Chair Caning, the nation's only chair caning school and museum, with her husband Dave Klingler in Asheville, North Carolina. Silver River Chairs is the home of dozens of workshops, internships, and apprenticeships, and offers work study and studio rentals for the aspiring caner or seat weaver. Brandy considers herself an ambassador of the craft, traveling the country to speak at conferences and teaching at schools like Aramont School of Arts and Crafts and John C. Campbell Folk School. Thanks for being on the show, Brandy.
Thank you.
So let's start by hearing about you and some teachers who've had the most influence on your life.
Well, I learned from my Aunt Linda. She learned from her dad and her uncle. Her mother also did chair caning, as did her grandmother, my great-grandmother. So Linda really got me started on this path. I learned in 2005, and I just spent a week with her learning the basics of chair seat weaving. I learned 4 different styles, and from then, really, you learn with every chair. So I would say that, honestly, the chairs are my biggest teachers. They're all so different. The construction elements, the patterns, the shapes of the chairs. There's so many different materials to work with, and really you do learn with every chair. I also learned a little bit later on by a woman named Andrea Clark. She lives here in Asheville, and I met her at a demonstration I was doing out in public. And she walked in and looks at the chairs, looks at me, looks at the chairs, looks at me. She says, "You're doing it wrong." And I said, "What? I've been chair caning for 3 years." And she said, "Girl, come to my house. Let me show you the X's." So that's one thing that you don't really learn, in a traditional craft, which is passed down. You might learn how to create a functional seat, but you might not learn the technically correct way to weave a seat. So spent some time with her and haven't turned back. I even called my Aunt Linda and said, "I'm doing it wrong." She said, No, you don't have to do it that way. And I said, "Well, the way it was explained to me, it's technically correct, and there's structural reasons for doing it this way." So since then, she has started doing the X's at the edge of the chair frame. See, I also learned from other chair caners through a guild that I'm a part of. And, you just spend time with people and learn easier ways of doing things, different tools. So being a part of that community has been helpful.
Tell me a little bit about where the tradition came in your family and maybe how it was passed from one generation to another.
Well, I wish we knew how far it went back past my great-grandmother, but unfortunately we don't. There could very well be a longer tradition that I'm not aware of. So my aunt learned from her uncle. She was taking care of him. He was in his 80s, and she's a nurse by trade. She just did chair caning on the side. Mm-hmm. But at that point, she wasn't doing chair caning, but she wanted to learn. My grandmother had already passed away years before. My grandfather was getting older, and her uncle was getting older, and she put an ad in the paper saying that she could do chair caning, started getting chairs in. So she started sitting these chairs around her house, and finally her uncle was like, "All right, I get it. I'll teach you." So when I was 29, I was a wandering college graduate looking for a real job, and I just moved back to the East Coast, and my dad said, "You really need to learn chair caning. Your aunt makes a few $100 a month on the side doing this. And, it's just something to do while you're looking for a real job." So I started learning, and like I said, you learn with every chair, but the more I did it, the more I started investigating the styles, and people would ask me questions and I'd go and research it. And so I kind of started this informal training. And eventually I was doing it 6 days a week, 8 to 10 hours a day. And I realized this is my real job.
Yeah. So now you're passing that tradition on to your nieces and nephews?
Yes, niece and nephew. I have one. They are currently 8 and 10, but a few years ago, they started learning on little kits. Both of them picked up on it pretty well. One of them even just recently did a heritage project for her 3rd grade class.
Oh.
Not only that, but we've been teaching kids through public schools. I'm a part of the Southern Highland Craft Guild, and I've done some educational demonstrations at the Folk Art Center. And so we get to expose the craft to kids there, as well as the American Craft Council shows. So it's really cool to see kids jump on it. They pick it up relatively quickly and they don't want to leave it. We've actually had parents dragging their kids away from the booths. Drive to Virginia tonight.
So you mentioned on your website that you had to learn how to best teach caning to children. So how do you go about simplifying a complex tradition into something that kids can enjoy and be successful at?
Well, honestly, I think it's a little bit easier for kids than it is for adults, because adults have this ego thing in the way, and the kids are just are like ripe for learning. Okay, now what? Okay, now what? And adults, they tend to get frustrated quickly. They get 3 rows in and they can't. Why can't I get this?
Yeah.
Because you just started it 5 minutes ago. So the kids, I think in a small group, they take it on pretty quickly. But recently we just worked with an elementary school in South Carolina, and we taught 125 fourth graders on weaving splint on little footstools. It was part of a arts integration grant that the art teacher had gotten. And we divided it up into 5 classes of 25 kids. And the ratio was pretty high. So it was 3 groups. And I had one group, my husband had another group, and the art teacher had a group. But she had just been learning too. So technically it was more of a 12 or 13 to 1. And it was a hustle. They just started out kind of going for it. Like I said, they're ready to do it. And if they messed up, all of them at once, I need help. So you quickly have to say, okay, I'm going first to you, and then I'm going to go around the table.
Yeah.
In that format, because of the limitations and time, you really only had 20 minutes at a go. And then they had to line up and get ready to go to their next class. And then, some of them got it. Not all of them did, but some of them got it really well. Some of it really wanted to get it, and they weren't, and you couldn't spend that time with them. So I definitely have a new respect for the educational system and the ratios that teachers face.
Oh, yeah. So looking at this from an outsider, from somebody who knows nothing about caning, it looks like it should be pretty simple. So what's difficult about caning? Educate
what
me.
isn't difficult about chair caning? There are many things that are difficult about chair caning. There are so many different types of materials. Each material has its own nuances. There's cotton strapping called shaker tape, which is possibly the most easy material to work with, woven in a warp weft pattern. There are other materials for the warp weft pattern. One of them is splint reed. Hickory bark is the more authentic version of the splint reed. And you actually have to cut down a tree. The material explanation can go on for quite a while.
Yeah.
So I'll go on to rush and rattan. So rush is the material, cattail rush or bulrush.
Okay.
So literally twisting the leaves into a cord, which you then wrap around the chair seat.
All right.
And then rattan. So the rattan is a palm that only grows in Southeast Asia. The rattan palm strips vary in size by 0.5 millimeter. Those are woven through holes drilled in a chair seat, mainly in a pattern called the 6-way standard. It can also be pre-woven on the loom, and you press that into a seat, kind of like fixing a screen door. So what's hard about weaving? Not only is there the pattern, but there's the material. We call it material wrangling or cane management. So it always wants to twist. And there are many factors like crowding the holes in the chair seat. So if you crowd the holes, how are you going to get more strands through?
Yeah.
And then within the 6-way pattern, each step of the process has its own nuances, as well as the material having its own nuances. So it really is a complex, highly skilled labor that takes really decades to perfect.
So what happens to a chair if you don't do it right?
Well, you can have a functional chair seat that isn't technically woven correctly, as I learned early in the game.
Yeah.
Strands at the edges slide around. They tend to be a little more raised, so you can feel them. And it just creates kind of a messier edge.
All right.
And then with Rush, it's the easier pattern to understand, but hard to make look good. So mistakes that you make at the corners really show up when you start to fill in and get to the end of the seat. And that's 8 hours in the game.
Yeah.
Which is another hard thing about chair caning is that, for the hand woven chair caning, it takes, 15 to 18 hours with lots of experience, so we involve 30 hours of class time to do the first seat in our class. Yeah.
Wow.
And that's something we hear all the time. Is it really going to take all 5 days? Yes. It's going to take all 5 days.
Is that just because there's a lot of starting over?
No, it's just that's how long it takes to weave the seat.
Oh, wow. All right.
Yeah. Over, under, continue.
Jeez.
Yeah, there's a really funny Parks and Recreation episode where Ron Swanson, who's played by Nick Offerman, is doing a televised chair caning demonstration for a fundraiser. And he goes, first you go over, then you go under, then you go over and under. And what's next? That's right, over. So props to him for getting the chair caning craft out to a national audience.
Yeah. Seriously. So does your dad also have a chair caning business?
No. So he encouraged me to learn and then promptly died on me. So our business is in effect kind of a tribute to him, whether intentional or unintentional. Like I said, really, it was just something to do on the side to make money while I was looking for a real job. But it definitely helped propel me to make him proud after he passed away. So he knew I was doing chair caning on the side, but he definitely did not see the business, either the restoration business or what we turned it into now, which is the school and museum. But my aunt has taken that role on, and anything I do now is to make her proud, as well as myself and the craft. The craft it's got this ancient and global history. And at some point, we just kept seeing people's reactions to our work and to the process and to the chairs and hearing the stories of the chairs. And we just really felt compelled, my husband and I, to push the craft into the future.
Yeah. So tell me how that process went, changing from just being a restoration business to starting the school and opening the museum and all that.
It's a long story, as long as why is chair caning difficult. But basically, we had been weaving in a small windowless studio in the River Arts District of Asheville for about 5 years. And we kept seeing people's reactions to it. And everybody kept saying, oh, this is a lost art. Oh, this is a dying art. And, meanwhile, the internet, social media was happening and building at the same time. And we were finding chair caners all over the world through Facebook. And we just kept saying, no, it's actually not a dying art. We see chair caners all over the world doing this. In conjunction with that, as much as we were weaving, it's physically demanding work. So over time, we were starting to feel the effects of it on our bodies. We were getting shoulder injuries and back injuries and occasionally like hand injuries, musculoskeletal injuries that you have to take a break from. It's just an occupational hazard, really. Mm-hmm. Any repetitive motion is going to take a toll, whether it's working on a computer or working on a chair. So we started to have to think different in our business. How are we going to keep doing this without breaking ourselves? And again, we were just so busy. We were just 4 months out for restorations for 10 years, whether at home or in the small studio. So we decided there needed to be more chair caners. And that's actually one of the pieces of advice I didn't take from my dad. He said, don't teach anybody, they'll steal your business. I really do think the teaching is where it's at. Not only does it give our bodies a break, when it happens, it's more financially lucrative than weaving a chair. Like I said, a chair seat takes 20 hours to weave if it's the lace cane. And you can only charge so much for that. You can't charge $50 an hour shop rate for 20 hours. Nobody will get their chair done.
Yeah.
So, it really is a labor of love when you're doing the restoration. So even though the price tag seems big to the person paying the chair caner is often making less than $10 an hour, sometimes less than that. So we really needed to diversify our business. And we really felt like people needed to be doing this, or it would be a dying art. We didn't feel like it was a dying art, but we felt like, this is why people quit chair caning. So the more chair caners that are out there, the more the craft can be propelled into the future. We took a road trip in 2014, and we went to a Seat Weavers Guild gathering in Sturbridge Village, Massachusetts. On the way there, we stopped for lunch at a brewery in Pennsylvania. And the waiter said, "Oh, you guys do chairs? And there's a chair exhibit right up the road." We were like, "Check, please."
Oh.
And we ran up the road and we discovered the Art of Seating exhibit. It tours the nation for the last maybe decade or so, and it's 200 years of American design. And we literally were like running around freaking out. And we were getting on our knees, looking under the chair seats to make sure they looked as good on the bottom as they did on the top. And basically we were able to see that this is a viable path, like chairs are a draw enough so that they have a touring exhibit. We could see that it was elevated, like people think of chair caning, they think, "Oh, I see chairs on the side of the road all the time," or "My grandmother used to do this." Well, yes, but they're also in international museums. The V&A Museum in London has an entire floor dedicated to chairs, many of which have woven seats.
Yeah.
The Vitra Design Museum in Germany. There's so many museums that feature chairs. And we, in our little isolated bubble at that time, being small business owners in Asheville, North Carolina, just and being self-taught largely, we didn't realize this was out there.
Yeah.
So we also were inspired by a show called Craft in America, and we saw Lowell's Boat Shop, which is in Amesbury, Massachusetts, and it's a working boat building museum. So I was watching that and I was like, that's me with chairs.
Yeah.
Yes, this is what I need to do with chairs, a working chair caning museum. I mean, it's not only the chairs sitting there, like in the Art of Seating, but the workshop and the classroom space is open. So you can see the action happening. It's not a static exhibit, it's a dynamic exhibit. So we were already getting a lot of visitors to our shop in the River Arts District, but we moved to a bigger space right around the corner, and we have 2,500 square feet. We built a half wall around the classroom and workshop area. So right when you walk in, you can see the chairs in action. And then if you go around the corner, you can see the static exhibits, the process exhibits. And then like I said, we do school visits, and we have schools come into the shop. And then we teach outside of the shop too. So that's how it all started. It's been a wild ride. And I have more amusing information about, about being a teacher. We opened this school, and so all of a sudden people are like, "That's great. Where else do you teach?" And I'm like, "Well, nowhere, just paid thousands of dollars to open this shop."
Yeah.
"Oh, you have to teach elsewhere so you can be a recognized expert in your field." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I have to teach elsewhere?" And this made sense. It did. I always wanted to teach at John C. Campbell Folk School or Aramont and places like that. But teaching outside of the shop, as I heard on previous episodes of your podcast, reinforced, is a lot more work than teaching inside your shop.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about those kinds of experiences.
Well, working in our shop, not only do we have everything on site so we don't have to pack it up, move it out, unpack it, repack it when it's done, and move it back and then unpack again. But there is the benefit of having hundreds of chairs to look at. Recently, we were teaching a laced cane class, and the 7th step of that is the binder, which is just a sewed on strip of cane to finish the edge. And I was able to go into the back and pull out 7 or 8 different examples of binders and how they're done. Some were correct, some were incorrect, some were correct but sloppy, and some were, just a good quality work.
Yeah.
So being in the shop has that added benefit, as well as it's all chairs, so many different styles of weaving. So the students can look around and say, "Ooh, I want to take this next," or "I never thought about this style. Maybe I'll do that instead of doing the rush,"
Yeah.
And teaching at other venues is a lot more work, but it's also invigorating in other ways. It gets you out of the shop and the day-to-day, next we have to do this, next we have to do this.
Yeah.
We're not answering the phones, we're not checking emails, we're solely focused on what's happening at that venue. And you get to meet other people who, are looking for more of the stay on site experience, like Aramont or John C. Campbell.
Yeah.
somebody cooks for you at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You're not going home and like opening up a Trader Joe's frozen meal because you're so tired. You're going to a full proper sit down meal and hearing about other crafts that people are learning. And so it really is invigorating, even though it is a little more tiring, a lot more work.
So tell me about the first class that you taught. How did that go?
Well, we were still in the small studio. We didn't know how long it would take. We initially did our lace cane class as a 4-day class because we could get it done in 3 days if we're working straight through.
Okay.
And we had to add a 5th day to the class. The first few times we were like, okay, so we need to add another day. But it is an expensive class. A lot of times people are paying for lodging and gas and they're coming from out of town. So we try to keep costs down as much as possible. We also had experiences, and this is, I think, is what it's like to be an artist business owner. Sometimes people don't take you seriously. So we had a class, and we're not afraid to do a class for just one person. We really want people to learn, and we know people are taking time out of their schedules and making arrangements. So there was one woman in the class, and the morning of the class, she called and she said, hey, well, I guess you can figure it out that I'm not going to be there because it's raining really hard and I just didn't feel like making the trip up to Asheville. And meanwhile, we had completely shut down our restoration business. We cleaned the shop, we set up, we were prepared for her. So we didn't take a deposit. We were pretty laid back at that point. And it really does throw a wrench into it. People don't realize what goes into making something, and what goes into preparing to teach someone to make something.
Jeez, that's rough.
Yeah, but you live and learn, and we definitely, all of these experiences helped us kind of hone in our policies and procedures, and whether it's for restorations or for classes. We've had surprises like somebody signed up online, but some error happened within the website and we didn't get the message, and she showed up ready to take a class. And we were like, who are you? Class? What class? Fortunately, that only happened once.
Yeah.
But, you're here. We're going to teach you. We're going to clean up what we're doing, and we're going to focus on you right now. And so, yeah, there's always some sort of surprise. And we've had to deal with things like, recently we had a guy with MS and he walked with a cane, and we are on a 2nd floor in a building that has been grandfathered into building codes.
Yeah.
So we try to explain over and over that it's physically demanding work. Are you going to be able to turn this chair upside down every time you finish this row? You're going to have to turn it over and weave the bottom. Oh, yeah. When we get there and it's somebody who, I just had a shoulder surgery. What? When was your shoulder surgery? It was about 2 weeks ago, but I thought I would be okay. So we've learned to really grill people on their physical state as well. We don't want to insult anyone, but this is physically demanding work. And if there are more than one person in the class, we can't be turning the chair over every time they need to turn the chair over.
Yeah. It's interesting. Sounds like there's a lot of expectation management. People come in expecting it's going to be easy.
Yes, for sure. And like I said, that's where we, almost every single person that comes in, is it really going to take all 5 days? Or why can't I get this? And there's literally a line on the chair that we point to about a third of the way down. And we say, it's going to take you until right here to understand this pattern. And they'll be frustrated. And they get down to the line and they're like, oh yeah, you're right. I do get it. Yes. This is new. This is networks in your brain. This is muscle memory. This is so many factors. You can't just, I compare it to like learning a dance. Somebody's not going to be able to show you the dance and you're going to be able to do it perfectly. You're going to have to practice at it.
Yeah. So you guys have lots of different ways to learn at your center now. I know you do day classes, you have those 5-day classes. I know you do internships and apprenticeships. So what's it like teaching in so many different formats all the time?
Well, it does shake things up a little bit. But I feel like, as far as being an ambassador of the craft and being compelled to perpetuate it, we want to give as many people as we can the opportunity to learn. We can't really do less costly classes and give them the same product. A lot of places it needs 6 people to fill. And if there's not 6 people, we're going to cancel the class. And so we understand, again, that people are paying for lodging, they're getting somebody to watch their kids or their dogs or their parents who are aging, they're paying for all sorts of expenses to get there, and we're not going to cancel the class. So we wanted to offer a less costly option for our two longest classes, Rush, which takes 2 days, and lace caning, which takes 5 days. So we like to give people the end result, like, here's your chair. You have completed this chair. Mm-hmm. But so many people don't have those 5 days or those 2 days, and they just kind of want to get a taste of it before they really decide if they want us to fix the chair or if they want to fix it themselves. So we started offering intro workshops. And so we have a chair in each stage of the weaving process, and we do a demo. We encourage video taking, note taking, photographs. We want people to learn. It's $50. We call it a crash course demo. And if there's time at the end, then they can get their hands on the chairs and just get a feel for it. So those have actually been really popular, despite our resistance to not having a completed project at the end of it.
Yeah.
We've had one star student from these classes. She's done a couple of crash course classes, and she sends us chair pictures every now and again. Look what I've done. And there's like a whole room full of chairs. And so, yeah, I mean, even if we're not there over her shoulder to, maybe pull this one a little bit tighter, or maybe adjust this corner a little bit more, like, she's getting it. She's pushing the craft into the future. She's showing other people that she's doing chair caning, and they're proud of her, and they're telling other people. So that chair caning really isn't a dying art. It's happening.
Yeah. Do you prefer certain formats?
Well, we like I said, we were surprised by the popularity of the short format. So while we enjoy that format now, we weren't so sure about it when it first started. But we really do like the relationships that come out of the longer classes. We have a 2-week boot camp where people can come and learn 5 basic styles. They learn 4 styles in 1 week. And then the 5th style, which is the lace caning, takes the whole 2nd week. And you really get to spend time with people in the shop. They really make it, after day 2 or 3, they're starting to say hello to customers that walk in the door, or visitors that walk in the door. And they're telling everybody how cool it is. And yeah, I just learned, and look at this chair I did yesterday. And it really does have an effect on visitors who are learning passively versus actively. I really do like spending time with folks and seeing their pride as they learn these new skills, and especially seeing the whole collection of chairs they wove over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah. So I know that your shop and classroom space is pretty open. What's it like trying to manage classes and your regular business at the same time?
Well, fortunately, I work with my husband, Dave, who is not only great with weaving chairs, but also great with people. So, we've toyed with having other people come and teach classes, and that's a whole other subject, like how do you pay them and how do you coordinate and all that stuff. But at the moment, it's just me and Dave doing the teaching. And so one of us is the lead teacher, and the other one answers the phone and catches the visitors at the door and explains there's a class going on. That support person, can jump in and help out at critical moments, like when everybody's getting started and has questions right away. We halt production. There's no production happening, no restorations happening when the classes are going on. So it is like running 2 different businesses. We've had some interns come in and help from time to time, and they've been great in that support role too. Currently, it's just us. We lost both of our assistants back last year to really good full-time opportunities. And it really is a 5-person job or a 5-person business. And I just think about all the things we can accomplish if we had a team of people. But I think that if the other person wasn't there, we would have to probably close the shop down and really just focus on the students. But as it is, it really adds so much. It's one thing if you walk into a studio and you see somebody who's been caning for 15 years caning a chair. And it's another thing if you walk into the studio and you see people learning and having fun with it and accomplishing things that you never thought a beginner could accomplish.
Yeah.
So I like having the open studio. Again, that was kind of the whole point in the beginning, is an active museum where you can see the work happening and see the finished product in the museum area.
So you were just talking about interns. Tell me what that's like.
Well, it's been great. We really do get inspired. And, anytime you hire somebody, whether it's an internship or a paid assistant, it slows down the process. And it makes you kind of back off of your business minded production focus and focus on details, and makes you analyze how people learn. You get inspired by other ideas that they have. You get to kind of analyze the process a little bit more than you would if you're just weaving a chair on your own. We've had some great interns. One girl came from an hour and a half away once a week and stayed with us for about a year. We've had another woman come from 4 hours away once a month. She also learned from her aunt, and she had been doing chair caning for years. She just saw us online and felt like her skills needed a little bump. And then we've had a really amazing girl. It was actually right after our first intern quit. She got a proper job in her hometown in a museum. And we were talking and we said, I want somebody, who has this, and this, somebody who's younger and enthusiastic and really, into the museum and into the school and into the people. And within an hour, we got this 6-page resume from this amazing woman who is actually well overqualified to be an intern. She had a master's in museum studies and native basket weaving background, as well as auction background. So it was a millennial who totally appreciated antique furniture.
Nice.
Yeah. And this is one thing that really drives me nuts. Millennials don't care about woven chairs and chair caning and antique furniture. And I just have completely the opposite experience. We have people coming in now who want to be interns. If you ever need any help, let me know. And they find us on Instagram, and they're in their 20s or 30s, and they're chair geeks, furniture geeks, and they just want to learn and experience this craft. The interns have been amazing. A few of them we've started paying because they were so good and so beneficial to our attitudes and our business, as well as good at weaving the chairs.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that you have so many young people that are interested.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's not been a surprise to me, but people don't want to hear it either. That's what surprises me. They don't care about furniture. They do. Yes, they do. I have completely different experience with that. And they just kind of look at me like, I don't want to believe that.
Yeah. That makes me wonder what kind of satisfaction certain old people get out of believing that young people are so different or defunct or whatever.
Yeah. This guy came to my shop a couple weeks ago, and he moved from Olympia, Washington to Jonesboro, Tennessee, to learn from one of my chair gurus, Curtis Buchanan, who's a Windsor chair maker. And I said, that's awesome that you did that. I'm sure it's a culture shock. Is Curtis paying you? And he said, no. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. You moved across the country to learn this skill. How can people say that millennials don't care about this stuff? And yet he's not getting paid for it.
Yeah.
And being involved with the schools, Penland and John C. Campbell, there are a lot of young people who aren't making very much money doing the craft school circuit and learning these skills. They say it's a dying art, but it's not. I mean, these young people are putting in time and money of their own and not earning much money to learn these skills and spend some time really perfecting working with handmade objects and handmade processes. So, I think honestly that millennials are really geeking out on it, which is what I love.
Yeah. Do you think that there are ways to encourage your students to get into the geeky stuff?
Yes.
Okay.
We drop that on them all times. And then you can see them kind of nodding and soaking it up. And then you say, is this too much? And they're like, no, keep going. So we always start the class not with the chair and, okay, now let's get started. We have a piece of the rattan palm. This is what you're working with, the outer bark of the rattan palm. It is not bamboo.
Yeah.
Throughout the class, we'll quiz them. Okay, pop quiz. What is this? And so we drop that information on them throughout the class. So we want people to leave not with just an understanding of the process, but of the craft in general. And I've recently started Not recently. It's been a culmination of 10 years of work and research, but finally have gotten a presentation together called A Brief History of Chair Caning,
Okay.
which spans about 6,000 years and the entire world. And to show the variety of woven chair seats from 4000 BC until present day studio craft, including the mid-century Danish cord and rattan use in Danish design and Scandinavian design, Victorian furniture, the Greeks, the klezmos chair. So we really think that it's important for our students to understand that this is special. And even if their goal is just to finish the chair because they want it repaired and they didn't want to pay for us to repair it, we still want them to walk away with understanding that not only is the process complex, but the history is rich and is worthy of you having this knowledge and spreading that knowledge when people see your chair.
Yeah. So, I mean, theoretically, you could just teach people how to do the thing almost factory-like. What do you think that understanding the history and the background adds to the craft?
Well, again, like I said, for the first few years, I was just doing it. I thought it was cool. It was fun to have a finished product at the end, something that I made that's functional. But it wasn't until I started to learn the history and different design elements that I really started to kind of fall down a rabbit hole. And while everyone isn't going to fall down that rabbit hole, if they retain one nugget of information that, some Egyptian by the Nile was doing the same thing thousands of years ago, and look what I just did, the same thing, then I think that helps to protect the craft. And we do question our students at the beginning, what are your goals? Do you want to do this as a business? If so, we're going to give you this much more information. If you just wanted to finish this chair, then great. We're going to make sure you finish this chair. So we check in with goals, but we just can't help to drop that history on them and to drop on them information about what is doing today, who they should follow on Instagram, where they can see woven chairs in a museum. Oh, you live in this area? You should go to this museum. You should look up this chair maker. It's that connection. And the chairs have these stories. The chair caners have this story. And I really think it's in the connection with others and with history that are going to make it important, because these chairs really are everywhere. They're in Elle decor, they're on the runways, Christian Dior, Van Gogh painted them, Monet, Manet, Matisse. There's a picture of Monet in his studio with a gorgeous, authentic rush chair next to him. Picasso sitting in a bentwood rocking chair. Picasso actually did a painting called Still Life with Chair Caning, which is kind of random. It's not his best painting, but it's out there. So I really think that seeing these connections kind of roots you into where you are in time, I guess.
Yeah. It's very interesting the way that traditional crafts, as they're practiced in the modern world, can tie you back to the story. I guess if you're fixing an antique chair, not only are you practicing this tradition, but you're literally doing it on the same piece of wood as somebody else.
Yes, your hands are passing where somebody's hands have passed generations ago in some cases. These chairs are well built and they're older than we are, and they'll be here long after we're gone in a lot of cases. And I do have to give credit to Pier 1 and Restoration Hardware. While their seats definitely have planned obsolescence, I only paid $150 for this chair, and it's going to cost $200 to fix it. Yeah, well, it was done with low wage labor in Indonesia. And over here, it's going to cost more. Even though they have these chairs that are of a slightly lesser quality that you pay less for, they're still getting the woven chairs out. Like right now, I know Target has caned furniture as well as caned waste paper baskets and caned desk sets. I'm seeing caned purses at Marshall's pop up. And it's so funny to see how everywhere it really is. Cane and lighting, cane pattern on some towels that I got from LL Bean. And Kenny had a cane pattern bedspread. Yes, I own it. It really is kind of everywhere if you just open your eyes to it.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So I know that you do a lot of speaking and presenting at conferences about this kind of stuff too. Tell me about it.
I've started going around to different woodworkers associations and speaking to them. The first time I did it, I was asked by a furniture conservator in Winston-Salem. He does an informal group in conjunction with the Museum of Early Southern Decorative Arts. It's unsanctioned, but it's just a bunch of guys that do woodworking getting together and talking about furniture making skills and tools and whatnot. So the first time I did it, it was me and about 20 men. And I roll in there with a bunch of chairs and material samples. I didn't have my presentation ready yet. And I just started talking about chairs, this chair, that chair, look over here, look at this. So this is technically incorrect. And all these guys that thought they knew chairs were learning something. And I went my hour. And then they were like, keep going. And I said, really? I mean, because I've already gone my hour. And they're like, yeah, well, this guy got sick. He was supposed to go next. And so 2 hours later, I'm still talking about chairs and they're still wanting to learn about chairs. So it was kind of a rush to know that people are into what you're into and that you can influence people who already are highly skilled. But again, chair caning is such a neglected craft that there's not too many people. I was going
to say, yeah.
Yeah.
You've got a very niche topic.
Absolutely. That's definitely helped our business model. But eventually other woodworkers associations, one guy who was at the talk invited me to a conference in Raleigh. And then my husband went to Woodworkers Association in Kingsport, Tennessee. And so we've kind of been making the circuit through the Southeast. And most recently, we were invited to speak at the Furniture Society conference in Milwaukee, which is really exciting to bring that to a national audience and with proper slideshow.
Yeah. I think I read somewhere on your website that you hosted the Seat Weavers Guild a few years ago.
So they are a relatively small organization. And at this point, it is a nonprofit, but it's a private, not a private club, but it's kind of a smaller group of people. There's about 100 members. And it's pretty grassroots, good people with good intentions trying to preserve the craft. We went to a Seat Weavers Guild gathering in Massachusetts. Like I said, it really, we learned different things, new tools we should try, some techniques, and we offered to host it in Asheville. So we had it at the Folk Arts Center. We had a record attendance of over 100 chair caners. Usually the gatherings are kind of more of a 50-person event, and these people have all generally known each other for a while. We had Chair Nerd Jeopardy. Oh, yes, we did that. We had Chair Nerd Jeopardy. We had the keynote speaker was a weaver named Walter Turpening, who braids his own cotton cords and has his own unique style of woven bench seating designed for loom weavers and spinners. We had a chair anatomy quiz so people can make sure they know their parts of their chair, not just the seat, which is something that chair caners often neglect to learn. And we had musical chairs, which was 6 different stations. We had Danish cord, staining of cane, corn shuck weaving, belt weaving, just really showing that you can be innovative and the variety. We just like to show off the diversity of the craft. So
yeah, so since this is a traditional craft and there's like a right way to do it, how much room is there for innovation?
I think there's a lot more than, thanks to social media. There is a lot of room for innovation. I've seen some pretty impressive examples online of people using the 6-way pattern with different techniques on really impressive chairs. I met this guy who wants to do cane on acrylic, like in a clear acrylic frame with cane woven into the seat. Yeah, there's leather. We've used leather cord for rush before, and it turned out beautifully. Once with a class of 6th grade girls, I was going to be doing cattail rush weaving, which is, it cuts your hands enough as it is, but then I stabbed myself in the palm. And I wasn't going to be able to have my hands in this juicy vegetative water mess. So I just grabbed a bunch of fabric strips and had them twist the fabric together as if it were the cattails.
Yeah.
a lot less mess involved. And they loved it. They loved the upcycling aspect of it. There's a woman named Sue Muldoon in Connecticut who specializes in belt chairs. And they're just beautiful.
Like clothing, belts?
Yeah, belts.
Oh,
Woven belt. It's leather straps.
cool.
You know? Yeah, absolutely. And it's there's so much crap out there in the world. And it just gets thrown into the landfills, and why not use them? Our intern, Lucy, she got her hands on a whole pile of t-shirts that somebody had they were changing their logo. So they were just going to donate all the t-shirts. Well, she took the t-shirts, cut the top off under the armpits, created this long t-shirt yarn, and wove a rush chair with it. And it was beautiful. And everybody was so inspired by it at the demo we did at the Folk Arts Center when she showed it off. And we asked her to come with us to a Seat Weavers Guild gathering in Arkansas to show off the technique to the rest of the chair nerds. So I think there is a lot of room for innovation.
Yeah, there you go. So where do you see the future of caning headed?
Well, I hate to start with restoration hardware and Pier 1, but I do think that they're keeping it relevant. I think that the more people are buying this furniture and are attracted to this furniture, the more it's going to stick around. I think that the studio craft movement, these furniture makers of all ages, honestly, are using woven chair seats, whether it's bark or shaker tape or cane. I think that I disagree with 90% of the people that come into my shop. I think the millennials, they're going to bring the craft into the future. I think that the Danish modern or Scandinavian furniture craze that has come back around right now is inspiring a lot of makers to use woven materials on their chairs. I've seen a lot of professional crafts schools, Haywood Community College, Penland, a lot of makers there are using Danish cord. They're dyeing Danish cord. They're dyeing cane. They're, just really creating innovative designs using these cane panels. So whether it's the maker using the cane in a design, that chair 50 years from now will need to be restored. And so I think it's a cyclical, it's been around for thousands of years, and it's going to continue to be around for thousands of years. I really do think that it's everywhere, and you just have to open your eyes to it, honestly.
Sounds good. So why don't you tell me where people can learn from you?
You can find us online at www.silverriverchairs.com. You can find us on Instagram at Silver River Chairs, or on Facebook, Silver River Center for Chair Caning. You can swing by our shop in the River Arts District of Asheville, and we will be glad to geek out on chairs with you. Probably more information than you were prepared to hear. And you can find us in conferences and demos all around the U.S.
Okie dokie. Sounds good. Thanks so much for being on my show, Brandy.
Hey, thanks for your effort in promoting the craft.
If you like this episode, you can visit us on iTunes and give us a rating. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook at TWYH Podcast. Hey guys, I have some awesome news. My craft school now has a name and a website. It's called Good City Craft School. The website is goodcitycraft.com, and you can go visit it. This podcast is going to be hosted there now, so you can see show note pages. And I've also got a blog where I'm going to write about the connections I make while doing these interviews and the progress I make while building the school. You can sign up for our email list to get updates. If you're the kind of person who wants to take workshops from world-renowned craft instructors in Salt Lake City in the next year or two, that is definitely a list you want to be on. Like I said, it's goodcitycraft.com. You can also find us on Instagram at goodcitycraft and Facebook at Good City Craft School. We'll see you in a couple weeks. Teach with Your Hands is produced by Amy Costello. The music is Admin by Poddington Bear. Hear more at soundofpicture.com.